man, before my first Arnold, I woke up in the morning and I'm like, I don't feel good. I feel sick. You know what? And I feel flat. I think I'm going to have some eggs and pancakes. Not part of the plan.
Fuck it. Let's see what it does.
I'm literally laying backstage in a fetal position. I'm shaking because I'm dehydrated. I tell my wife I'm not going on stage. I'm like, I'm not going out there, man. I'm like, I can't even fucking move. I probably look horrible. My wife goes, they're all going to think you're a huge fucking pussy. You better. Paul was in the audience and my second wife, and I just guys, it's the funniest fucking story. So they announced me the winner, and all you see is fucking Lozon blowing chairs out of the fucking way, going straight up the fucking middle, throwing people out of the way to get to the fucking stage. Like,
the fuck is this guy?
Yeah, exactly. I never liked Ben Pekulski. I always thought he was a dick.
That's what we want to hear.
That was again my fault.
I want to get into that a little more.
So.
Everybody, welcome back to the D2 podcast. Around the table, we got Zach Blotchick, Nick Justice, Lance Hefner, myself, Zach Devo, and we got a big guest today. So this isn't just another episode. This is a straight up bucket list moment for the Dumbbells and Doobies podcast. We got a whole hype up for you, Fouad. Let's go. Today we're bringing on a man who has done it all in the bodybuilding world. He stood on the Olympia stage, he's battled it out at an Arnold Classic, and he's claimed multiple IFBB pro wins. But that's just scratching the surface. He's a business mogul, the mastermind behind Hosstile supplements, a contest promoter for the Detroit Pro, the voice behind some of the biggest podcasts in bodybuilding, from the legendary RBP podcast to the Bodybuilding and Bullocks. Let's be real. This man is a huge reason why this podcast exists. Huge reason. We're avid listeners of everything he puts out. And today we get to pick his brain, talk some shit, and have a blast. So buckle up, light up, and welcome to Dumbbells and Doobies podcast, the one, the only, Fouad Abiad. Let's go.
There it is. Nice.
Thank you for having me on, man. That's the ultimate introduction. I've never had one like that. So thank you very much.
Let's go.
Hey, there it is.
I was about to tear the fuck
So
up.
the testosterone, the heart attack is about to happen. So if I just go out, let them keep going because we don't want to ruin this in any way. My God.
You just see a paramedic take him off to the side.
Fucking blacked out there.
That's embarrassing. That's hard to fucking sit through, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
Was it that bad?
No, it's not that it's bad. It's just I'm not one to sit and like listen to like my, you know what I mean? It's just hard.
Like,
but I appreciate it.
The UFC. That's your UFC intro.
Yeah, thank you very much.
We didn't get a walkout song, but next
Very,
time.
very cool. Yeah.
All right, so we have a ton of topics we want to get to today. So we all have a ton of questions, but we really want to just like get your input on a couple of things that have happened this week. So right off the bat, one of your new guys, one of the guys competing at the Detroit Pro, Jack Eagles, he competed yesterday at the Fit World, and I wanted some first thoughts on that because you guys talked about him a lot, maybe disrupting the Matt Grego and Wesley Vissers, but then seeing him on a pro stage yesterday, he was I think second call outs. So what's your thoughts on that? Like,
well, first I have to say part of that is promoter talk.
Right.
So people have to understand that, you know, people take all of my opinions and all of my thoughts on the podcast as gospel, as my true thoughts and opinions.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they are, but sometimes, you know, you play the game a little bit. I am a promoter. We're looking at the Detroit Pro. We got Wesley and Matt coming in, and I'm like, you know what, let's stir it up a bit and see if we can promote Jack a little bit and make it seem like he's part of the game, which looking at his Instagram pictures, it's not that I didn't think he would be competitive. Maybe competitive is the wrong word. I thought it would be interesting to see him next to Matt and Wesley.
Yeah.
But there was no world in which I thought he was going to beat either one of them.
Sure.
Like, he just doesn't have the mass, right? Like, and Ian, usually when we're on the podcast, Ian always gives the real take. Mm-hmm. I may be giving the promoter take, and then you'll hear Ian go, yeah, but he's not big enough, which is kind of something I already know. But as podcast hosts yourselves, you guys know that sometimes there has to be an antagonist.
Right.
Devil's advocate.
If I just go, yeah, he's too small, let's move on. That's kind of the end of the conversation, right?
Yeah.
So it's not that I don't think Jack is great. I think he has I think he has huge potential.
Yeah.
I think he could be a top Olympian one day once he fills that frame out. Yeah. As long as, and this is the tricky thing for people that haven't been around bodybuilding for a long time. A lot of times, as a physique fills out, it changes.
Yeah.
So it depends how he fills the physique out. If he can fill it out and keep all of his lines exactly the same as they are now, then yes, he will be very, very good. Do I think he stands a chance against Matt and Wesley this weekend? I think it's a great opportunity for him to stand next to two Olympians if he can get into a call out with them. But I don't think he's ready to beat either one. Yeah. That's kind of where, and as far as his showing yesterday, look, again, I think he's got an awesome structure and good symmetry. I think he was flat. He looked over dieted to me. He looked flat. I don't know if it would have made a difference if he was really full. A physique can look drastically different from week to week if it's super flat versus super full. So I'm hoping they make a correction coming into Detroit and he comes in filled out.
Well, I did watch his video. I think it was yesterday of him filling up for that show. It was like an 8,000 calorie load, but it's like when you're over dieted, that food does not stick the way it needs to stick.
And so, this is sorry, go ahead, Nick.
No, I was just saying, like, that's something that people don't realize. It's like, you realize it, though. But a lot of the audience and the listeners and the fans don't realize, like, what goes into that load and how a peak week is not something that you don't miss your peak. You create your peak. And if you either create it how you want to or you don't. So it's like, but the creation of that peak week starts weeks beforehand with making sure you're in a position to soak up that food. So like all the talk online is so crazy. People are like, oh, he was flat. He wasn't as big. And it's like, yo, yeah, you can fill up on 8,000 calories or whatever the heck. But if that prep was not ran for how it should have been ran, maybe there are decisions that were made that just were not, did not yield the outcome that they wanted. Like there's not much you can change there, you know? So hopefully the only thing I can like bank on between it was yesterday, right? Yeah, yesterday and next week at Detroit is just like if they just pull off a bunch of stress and he can fill up a little bit more.
Well, the thing is, I think you're 100% right that if you deplete for too long, and I've done this if you deplete for a long period of time and then you try and fill up, people think 8,000 calories sounds like a lot. It's not. The way I like to picture it in my mind, and I'm not a scientist, so I have these little cartoons playing in my mind all the time, but it's like a turbine, right? Yeah. And you're eating 8,000 calories, but that turbine just going to start moving faster. So you're so depleted that turbine just speeds up and keeps matching the food you're eating. Mm-hmm. And you never actually fill that glycogen bubble because it's just burning through all those calories. That turbine now is like, holy fuck, I finally got an influx of food, and it just cranks your metabolism through the roof, and you start burning through all those calories and not actually sticking. And that's not to mention who knows how much tissue he lost. Because when you're depleted for a long period of time, you do lose some tissue, and it takes a little bit of time to get it back. So I don't know if that was the case also. The thing about next week is I have done preps where I have been through that phase where I depleted for too long. I tried to load. It didn't look right on stage, but you still did ingest all those calories. And they have to go somewhere. So when you're done the show and you start drinking water again normally, and you start, you're getting all the salt in, and it's almost like your body comes alive on the fucking Tuesday afterwards. Mm-hmm. So if that's the case with Jack, and I don't know if it is, their next load won't even be a load. They'll just like kind of walk it through next week and end up on stage, because all that food he ate is going to come to the surface eventually. Like his body will show it at some point, if it's not a loss of tissue. If it's a matter of just being flat, that physique will show it Monday or Tuesday or whenever the water loads in.
It's the kind of hard part about Instagram with a lot of these crazy aesthetic bodybuilders, though, is when you're not seeing them next to anybody. You kind of do, because even going back to you being like the promoter side of things, I mean, I was watching him closely then, because I'm like, okay, can he do this? All right, let's. And you kind of still get tricked by it because they look so big and so aesthetic, not next to anybody. And then the minute everybody's on stage, you're like, oh, whoa,
Yeah.
perspective.
That aesthetics looks great, but all of a sudden the next guy over has got 20 pounds of tissue, and you're like, oh.
I mean, look,
Samson. Was a perfect
that's the
example.
jump from amateur to pro. Like, it's crazy.
everybody, like, I've been around bodybuilding for 25 years and I've been full Instagram. Like,
Right.
you know, I can't remember what pro was making their debut. I don't remember if it was fucking Vito or Crizzo, or I don't remember who it was, but I was like, oh, that guy's going to crush everyone. And then he ended up on stage, like, I don't know, somewhere outside the top 5 or in the back of the top 5 or something like that. So Instagram is tricky. Everybody knows the proper lighting to stand in, the proper angles to take. They post their best photos. They don't post any of the shitty, you know, the shitty poses that they're not great at. And also you're looking at a 2D photo and you're not comparing them to anybody. So I kind of knew, like, when we were talking about Jack on the podcast in Detroit, even in 2D, like, you can see Matt Grego is very heavily muscled in comparison to Jack Eagles.
Can we shift it real quick while we're bringing up Matt Grego? Yeah. How do you feel about so Matt Grego, very muscular, huge, just big ass dude with a big physique, and then you have Wesley, very aesthetic. How do you feel that matchup's gonna go? Looking at big, huge dude, kind of almost like bodybuilder style physique, and then Wesley's very classic. Legs are gonna be smaller, but he's won Arnold, so
I think it'll come down to conditioning.
Sure.
Myself, I think if Wesley is in the condition he was in when he won the Arnold, and Matt isn't matching that condition, I think Wesley will take it out. We'll take out the win.
Yeah.
I think if Wesley hasn't filled up at all since the last show, like, if his legs don't look full, if he's not 100% peeled, because the reason Wesley wins when he does win is not a balance thing. It's almost a presentation polish thing. When he is so peeled that the skin just looks like it's not even there, and his presentation is so perfect, he almost is able to hide the fact that he's completely imbalanced.
Right.
But but if Matt Grego is even remotely as close to as peeled, I think, going by the IFBB's criteria of classic, you would have to give it to Matt Grego because he's more balanced.
Right.
Did you by chance watch the video after the Arnold where it was Wesley and Stefan on a YouTube video? They were talking about what happened going into the Arnold, about how sick he was.
Oh, no, I heard something about that, but I didn't watch it. I heard something about food poisoning or something like that.
Yeah, it was food poisoning. It was tough. I mean, just hearing, I was like, dang, that's crazy. But he still pulled off a good look. Not the best we've seen him, but I definitely think the chances of Wesley replicating what he did when he won the Arnold are pretty high at the Detroit Pro, but also being fuller, because when he was so sick, the food was going nowhere. They couldn't feed him what they wanted to feed him. So it was just a flat, detailed look, but it just looked unbalanced. So I think Detroit, I right now have Wesley over Grego, just from chances of, how bad the variables were for the Arnold going into Detroit Pro, just how much better they are now. Yeah.
I'm going to tell you why I think Matt's going to win.
Okay.
And I'm gonna preface it with, I'm basing this only on if Matt is close to Wesley's conditioning. He doesn't necessarily have to be better, but he has to be equal or very close. Going under that context, I would have to say that the IFBB is trying to kind of put to bed this idea of what classic is, right? Because people are having this debate of whether classic is a look or is it a criteria? Is it an intangible, like a Logan Franklin that's missing some body parts but is still beautiful to look at, or is it a criteria that's objective, that has balance, symmetry, conditioning, and muscularity, just like bodybuilding does, with obviously weighted towards aesthetics? If that's what they're doing, they're going to push Matt, because Matt is the more balanced, symmetrical, aesthetic. Well, maybe not aesthetic, but more balanced and symmetrical of the two bodybuilders. And he's also more muscular. So the only thing Wesley would be able to beat him on is conditioning, presentation, potentially. And I don't know if that's going to be enough, because if the IFBB is trying to make a statement about what the criteria is, I think Matt suits the criteria more so than Wesley does.
I'm in that camp too. I was thinking I'm rooting for Matt. Not that I'm rooting, but I'm leaning towards Matt hardcore.
Do you think
For
that's
that
what the
same exact
IFBB is
reason.
doing? Do you think that's what they're doing, Devo? Kind of what Fouad said is they're like, yo, it's the aesthetic and the criteria of this division.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you guys nailed it when you said there's the 3 pillars.
Right.
When you guys did that and simplified it to the 3 pillars and each class has them just rearranged differently, that clicked with me so hard. I was like, holy shit. Okay. Because it's hard to put into words.
Simplifies it.
Yeah, it's hard to simplify that argument because it's like, well, it's, you look at Mike and you're like, yeah, obviously he's the biggest and he flows great. But then you look at Logan Franklin like we did and long and beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, when you listen to Tyler's breakdown of why Mike was better than Logan, I can't see that conversation going a different way for Wesley.
No.
Because it's like he does a good job of hiding his imbalances with his posing, but if you're sitting there judging, you can see clearly that there's an imbalance between the upper and lower body.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if they're trying to make a statement about, hey, this is an objective sport, it's not a subjective like we like this or we like that, you kind of objectively have to go with Matt as long as he's in good enough condition. Then I think that's kind of what they kind of have to do. But I guess we'll see on the weekend. It's going to be interesting. If you're asking me which physique I like better as far as what I think classic is, I mean, fuck, Wesley looks like Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
So it's like, do I like the way his physique looks? Do I like the way it flows? Do I like the way he presents it? Yeah, it's fucking awesome. But that's a subjective opinion. That's not objective criteria.
Do you think, in your opinion, Grego, just because, I mean, dude, he went from physique to classic and just put on a shit ton of size. Do you think that his like ceiling would be higher in open, or do you think he should stay in classic? Because I personally think he would do with a lot of size, filling out his frame, keeping things tight. I think he could really do well at open in years to come.
Well, I told him on my podcast that I thought he looked like an open bodybuilder.
That's what I've been saying.
Yeah, and I can totally see him with another 15 pounds. Not that that's easy to put on. And again, you don't know what's going to happen to a physique when you put on 15 pounds of muscle.
Right.
But if he looked exactly the same as he looks now with 15 more pounds on him, especially with his height, he would scare a lot of people in the open because height and size is a deadly combination, especially when it's like proportionate and round.
Right.
So I could see that. But at the same time, the guy just placed fourth at the Arnold.
Yeah.
So
He jumped a ton. Yeah.
So you kind of got to say to yourself, well, he's already on his way up. So why would he move to another class?
Yeah.
Because if I was him, I'd be like, well, fuck, I just placed fourth at the Arnold. If I'm in the top 5 at the Olympia, then maybe I just keep hammering this out for a couple more years.
Yeah, see what you can achieve.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what his ceiling is in his cap. Like, I don't know how much more weight he can put on.
Right.
I think he can put some more on for sure.
Where do you think he could put more size on to get to that like higher top 3 spots?
I'd have to take a really good look at his physique, but off the top of my head, I'm thinking back.
It's
Yeah.
back.
Yeah,
It's
back.
back for sure.
He's got a really good posterior in the hamstrings, and his
Yeah.
legs are pretty good.
Thanks,
But
his
his
legs and
maybe
arms.
arms could come
Yeah.
up a little bit too, but
Yeah.
back for sure.
Yeah.
I want to, I don't want to move past him, but like, I also want to talk about open because we're coming next weekend. We're so
we're so
excited.
excited.
We're,
Yeah,
we're
that's
road
awesome.
tripping out there. Open. What's your predictions? I mean, you got some exciting characters there.
I think on the RBP website, my prediction is William.
Yep.
I just think William looks phenomenal, and I guess I got a little bit of inside scoop because Stefan sent me his updated progress pictures.
Nice.
That's what I
Fucking
wanted. I wanted the
Yeah.
inside scoop. Let's go. We got an inside scoop here.
Clip it.
Shredded. Yeah.
Clip it.
But listen, James looks fucking crazy too. So
Yeah.
I think William's going to win. I think Sassan is a wild card, but I think James will be second. I think Sass will be third. I think Ron Gordon, as beautiful as his physique is, and as tall and as conditioned as he comes, he still has. I want to say he has too many gaps in his physique to beat some of the shorter guys.
Yeah.
So I think he would probably be in the 4th spot. And then I think I have Carlos. I mean, Carlos could be, if Carlos is in better condition, if Carlos is in really good condition, he could be as high as second or third.
Sure.
So Carlos is also a wild card, because if Carlos shows up like he showed up at the Olympia, then that's going to be a problem. Or not at the Olympia, I'm sorry, at the Arnold.
Arnold.
Yeah, I apologize. If he shows up like he showed up at the Arnold, then he'll probably be fifth. If he shows up in better condition, he could be as high as second. So that one's a tricky one to predict.
I think James could beat Carlos if Carlos shows up at like he did at the Arnold.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but then again, if James shows up like he shows up at the Arnold, right?
Yeah.
Which from the pictures I've seen, he's not going to. But the pictures we saw before he did the Arnold were also awesome.
Right.
So we have to see what happens the day of the show. I think a lot of people watching forget that there is a mental component and a cortisol spike that happens with some competitors. Well, with all competitors, but some competitors manage it better than others. And I've said this to James before. I feel like James is a lot like myself, where the stress level gets so high that it fucks with the way his peak goes. So I don't know. He feels more calm this time around. I think getting the first one out of the way at the Arnold was good for him. I think Detroit is a smaller show, so he probably feels less pressure. So I think we're going to see a good James. I don't know if he'll be able to beat William, but I think he's going to pull out of second place.
Nice.
Yeah, that's exciting big lineup for year. Is this year 2, right?
Yeah.
Year 2
Yeah.
of the Detroit Pro. That's
crazy.
Yeah.
That's
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say you got some fun storylines going. We got a big open battle, some redemption time, from the Arnold, and
Do you
some
have
huge
any
classic matchups.
insights on like the amateurs? Like, do you have the amateur show too there, or is it just the pro show?
No insights to the amateurs. I don't really follow the amateur level, like at that level. But I will say that the one tricky thing about having a show is trying to get the numbers up. So what we're trying to do is just get the NPC athletes to come to the show. So it's a little bit tricky that way with timing, but I don't know any, I haven't heard of any great amateur competitors that are doing the show that could be pros or have potential pro level physiques. I have seen one wellness girl that looked like she was doing the show, because people tag us in the Detroit Pro Instagram. There was one girl that was doing a wellness that looks like she could be a pro.
Nice.
And I've seen a couple classic guys that look really good, but I don't know anybody by name. These are just guys people that tag me and stuff on Instagram.
I was sitting right behind you and Ian, and the classic guys, the amateurs last year surprised me. One of the guys went pro in 2024. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I forgot his name though, but he was there. He competed at Detroit Pro.
Yeah.
But I remember specifically sending a video to my team group chat. I was like, you guys, these are amateurs.
Yeah.
This is the first year at Detroit Pro, and this is the level of amateurs that are showing up. And some of these guys, this is their first show. Okay, so it's just like last year, it was probably the amateur lineup for Classic at the Detroit Pro was probably the best Classic lineup in all the shows I was at last year for sure.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I think me and Paul are pretty proud of, and Ben is obviously a promoter as well in Detroit, but for me and Paul, because we've been doing this for 15 years together, our shows are, and I don't know, obviously it's because maybe I was a bodybuilder and Paul's a bodybuilder, and maybe it's the way we market the shows, but we always have a really good bodybuilding classic turnout. We don't usually have a great female contingent come out, but we always have great bodybuilders come to our shows. Like, because we have a show in Toronto as well that we've been running for 15 years. And it's always really strong in the men's, like the bodybuilding and classic classes.
Well, that was going to be my next question with because you brought up the Fouad Abiad Classic. What's like the biggest difference in terms of how, because you've been doing the Fouad Abiad Classic for 15 years, you said, yeah?
Yeah.
And like that, you guys got that rolling a long time ago. What's the biggest change when you guys were starting up Detroit Pro-Am? Like, how is it? Was it more difficult? Was it easier to get that running? Just from a business perspective, like what's the inside scoop of the level of difficulty for the Detroit Pro?
From a business standpoint, it's very fucking hard.
Really?
Yes. There's a reason. There's a reason why you see some shows come and go and they don't stick around for a long time. You know, there was the Indy Pro for a little while. There was a Boston Pro for like 1 year.
We were just talking. We
Yeah,
had a
holy
Milwaukee
shit.
Pro. There was one pro show that came to Milwaukee, and we were like, yes, and then it was gone. We were like, no.
Right,
Yeah.
right, and that happens, and who knows? I mean, that could be Detroit. We don't know. It's very difficult. Companies nowadays, so the internet has changed things for having shows, because if you were a supplement company before and you wanted to be seen, you would sponsor the show, you would set up a table, you would meet all the people, you would sell your supplements to them and tell them about your product and all this shit. And you would pay the promoter, you know, $5,000 or whatever to have your table there and promote your stuff. Nowadays, if I'm a supplement company, as like Hosstile, I can spend $5,000 in digital marketing and reach thousands more people with zero travel expense, zero. I don't have to fly in any athletes. I don't have to do anything. Right. So on a strictly business standpoint, if you take away the meet and greet aspect, which is important for a company to some degree, you can reach a lot more people by not sponsoring shows. So going back to being a promoter, it makes it very difficult to have a pro show, because we live in a time when people want to see prize money increased. Like our mandate from the IFBB is to give $10,000. We're giving 30. So
Which is huge.
we could get away with giving 10, but we're like, well, fuck, man, this is not like, we used to be the guys that were sitting around like you guys going, why don't they pay these guys more money? Blah, 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 blah. So it would be really hypocritical for us to go, fuck it, let's just give them 10 grand.
Right.
So we want to kind of put our, you know, you want to walk the walk. You don't just want to talk shit. Right. So we're like, okay, let's give them 30. We're going to give the classic winner 15. And we increased past where they wanted us to, what they wanted us to pay. And then you have to factor in the venue, the videographers, like there's just so many fucking expenses that go into it. The sanction fees, like all of these things go into putting on a show. And when sponsors are like, hey, it's easier for me just to fucking do digital ads than to pay you, you run into like a little bit of a roadblock, because you have most of the sponsors paying a lot of money to be at the Arnold. We're 3 weeks later. So you got to think these companies just spent their nut, 3 weeks ago at the Arnold. Some of these companies spent $500,000. They're like, sorry, we don't got any money. Like, you guys are on your own.
Right.
And then now we have Pittsburgh. So anybody who didn't spend money at the Arnold is like, yeah, we're saving our money for Pittsburgh because we're all going to be at Pittsburgh. So as a promoter, it gets tricky. You're like, you really have to reach out to a lot of people. And I'm not a great salesperson. Like, I don't like pestering people. I don't like, cold calling companies and be like, hey, I'll reach out to some friends. Ben will reach out to some friends. Paul will reach out to some friends, and we kind of put together enough to make it work. And then we also, and I don't want to say, I'm assuming this is an assumption, not for sure, but I think we're spending more than some other promoters. Like, we have our show in a theater, we don't have it in just a banquet hall. So like, we spend a little bit more money. So as a business, it's not like a huge moneymaker, right? But as fans of the sport, we enjoy being able to do it and having our name on a show and bringing people in and bringing people together and having it that way. Indirectly, I think it helps everybody a little bit. People get to know Paul more. People get to meet him at the show. Maybe he gets some judging jobs out of it. It helps Hosstile to be there and have their name as a title sponsor. So there's some indirect benefits to having the show. But as far as like the business side of it, it's not a massive moneymaker in Michigan until the athlete numbers on the NPC side grow. Like, when you talk about some of these shows in Texas that have like 400 amateur competitors, those guys are making money. Like, those guys are doing well, right? When you have 50 competitors, you're kind of like, you're getting by, you're doing okay, but you're not rolling in it. It's more of a passion project than it is putting money in the bank.
But I think just for going into your second year, you being such a good ambassador to the sport with the podcast, with just your presence online, you're being known for Fouad Abiad Classic. I think it's really cool to see, like, just for the second year, the numbers you guys are hitting for amateur and pro is so cool. So it's like
Yeah.
you guys have like you even though you just explained how hard it is kind of starting it up and reaching out to people and not trying to be like asking or being like a salesman.
Yeah.
It's just seeing it from a fan's perspective, Fouad, last year and going into it this year and how much more hype there is. It's like, yo, this show not just I don't want to say just because of you and Paul and them, but like how people look at you guys as a good type of authority figure in the industry, but also ambassador is what other shows never had starting off. You know what I'm saying? Like you guys, it's just like how much respect you guys have because of your integrity is why I know Detroit Pro is it's gonna blow up. It's gonna be crazy.
and look, most of you guys know, as competitors, we're always our worst critics, right? We're always the hardest on ourselves. People online think they can talk shit to you. They can't talk shit to you because whatever they say to you, you've already said to yourself 1,000 times looking in the mirror. So it's the same thing when it comes to business. I'm my worst critic.
Right.
So if I step out of my body for a second and look, I'm like, yeah, the Detroit Pro is fucking awesome. We have a beautiful venue. We have some top Olympians coming to do the show. All the NPC athletes are crazy excited that have been messaging me to do the show. Like the tickets are almost sold out. So the show is doing really well and has grown a lot in 1 year.
Yeah.
The problem is when I step back into my body, I'm very hard on myself when it comes to like the level of success I have in my mind. Right. I want Detroit to be on the same par as like Pittsburgh one day. I don't know, the Detroit show will never be an Arnold, obviously, but I want it to be a show that's seen as a premier show in the year, like the New York show is, like the Pittsburgh show is, like the Dubai Muscle show, like these kind of shows. I want it to be on that level. So when I think of that goal and we're here, then I'm like, we have a long way to fucking go. So
year 2 though, big jump.
No, and that's why it's important. Look, it's important to always, and this goes for physique as well, right? It's always important to set short-term goals, long-term goals. As far as short-term goals go, we're definitely hitting our stride in a big way. So I'm happy that way.
Well, Fouad, in corporate, we call those SMART goals.
Thank you. I'll use that from now on.
Yeah. It's what is it? It's some. Damn it! It's specific, measurable.
Accurate? No.
Accurate.
Why, what's your corporate job?
Okay, so I'm a regional sales manager.
Okay.
And so we call those SMART goals because they have to be achievable, but then you have your big goal, which is your big picture. So that's your corporate. That's your.
Thank you. I got
corporate
my
talk
last
of the day.
If it makes you feel any better
I'll
about
send
his
you some
advice, Devo fucks as a sales manager.
I'll send you some PDFs on it for you. Start getting your employees on it too.
All right. Perfect.
Yeah, not me. No.
We have a ton of topics we want to get into, and we've already been talking to you for a half hour here, but we're really excited about the Detroit Pro. I'll wrap this up and say really excited for next weekend. We went to the Chicago Pro as a team. We've been to the Arnold as a team. I would say I'm probably the most excited for this
the
one,
Detroit
just
Pro.
because
that's awesome.
of after last year's venue, seeing the pictures that came from it, seeing just the whole look of it,
The theater
hearing
looks
Nick's
incredible.
story. Like I was like, this one's really exciting. So we're excited to be there.
Just one more thing on it before we move on. The thing I love most about the show is I think when you're in a smaller theater, I mean, it's not a small theater. It seats close to 1,000 people, but it feels small when you're in there. Because when you're in there, it's all very dark.
Yep.
And then you have the black backdrop with just the spotlights kind of on the competitors. It feels like it's very intimate. Like, when you see those like MTV Unplugged with like just the fucking artist and then it's just a very intimate setting. Yeah. It almost feels old school that way in that it's just you and the fucking athletes. There's no bullshit. There's no screens. There's no fucking other stuff going on. It's just you watching these guys like in their best form. So I think my favorite thing that we've done with the show is just that like intimate feeling of like being connected to the athlete that's on stage.
You almost step into like a hyperbolic mind focus chamber when you're in there. It's crazy. It's the best feeling ever.
You know what it is, though?
Pretty cool.
It's because that's why theaters were built that way, though.
I know.
Like the stage. Yeah, exactly. Because like
it's a presentation
in the hotels or even at the Arnold, where it's that big auditorium,
it's cool.
It's so stretched out. Whereas theaters are stacked, so everybody feels intimate in the moment, which is really exciting. So it's gonna bring back like a really old school feeling, and we're excited for that. And like the lighting, the back. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Crazy.
And we're excited to see you guys as well. But okay, I wanted to get into some topics. So Zach, we were going to talk a little bit about your bodybuilding career and let our fans get to know really, like they probably already listened to you a ton, but we're going to take it back a little bit. So
For
Zach,
the
go
people
ahead.
that don't know you, we're gonna get to know you.
Yeah, Zach, he had some great questions he wanted to ask you.
So during your bodybuilding career, and this doesn't have to be necessarily like your best placing, but like what was your most memorable accomplishment in your career?
I think, well, those are kind of two separate things. I think my biggest accomplishment has to be my first pro win, because obviously winning a pro show is not easy. And I had so many close calls, like so many second places, that when I finally won, I was like, Jesus, fuck, this took me way too long.
How many shows did it take you?
Fuck, man. I turned pro in 2006. And
Holy shit! I was 6 years old, bro. What the fuck? That's crazy.
I didn't win my first show until 2015.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
So almost
Yeah.
a decade.
Yeah.
I remember that, dude. I was sitting in high school in 2015. I swear to God. And I remember you were doing videos with, is it Muscle and Strength or Muscle and Fitness?
Muscle strength.
Yes, and I was watching it in Resource, like doing my homework. And I had just different Fouad videos on about your cooking videos and all this shit. And then a couple weeks later, it was just like things were behind. This is when YouTube was popping off, and just like things were a couple behind with who was winning shows. I'm like, dang, that dude right there. I remember watching his videos. He just won. Won his pro show, and then never once would I think like, this dude's my boss. I remember I was like, dude, I would never would have imagined that shit.
So wild.
That's crazy.
What pro show
used
was
to-
it?
That was the Orlando Europa.
Oh,
nice.
nice. Wow.
I used to fucking crush on Muscle and Strength, man. Those videos
You
got
did,
like,
bro.
billions of fucking views. I used to love working with those guys. I got like 6 plaques at home because they used to send out at the end of the year they would send out like a 1 million view plaque.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Oh, nice.
And one year they sent me a box with 6 fucking plaques in it because my videos were just killing it on the channel. Anyway, those guys were a lot of fun. But no, yeah, the Orlando Pro, and look, it was just such a long time coming. And my wife was in the audience, and Paul was in the audience, and my second wife, and I just guys, it's the funniest fucking story. Now that everybody knows Paul, this is probably funnier. I win, and my wife is kind of backstage waiting to come out to give me a hug, and Paul's sitting like, I don't know, 5 rows back, and there's like the audience. The Orlando Europa was in an expo hall, so there's an expo going on, and there's people watching the show, so the seats aren't fully packed. There's like little areas to kind of squeeze through. So they announced me the winner, and all you see is fucking Lozon blowing chairs out of the fucking way, going straight up the fucking middle of the fucking, just throwing people out of the way to get to the fucking stage. So it was it was pretty special just because it'd been so long. Now, it was a small show. There wasn't a ton of competitors. I beat I think Alexander Fedorov came back. Is it Fedorov? Yeah, he came back after a long time off. He was pissed off that he didn't win, but he wasn't really at his best. And then Michael Lockett, who was my main competition that year, I edged him out, and he went on to win like 6 shows the next year. So I was like, okay, at least I beat somebody who's fucking good.
Yeah.
And then I went on 2 weeks later to win, or 4 weeks later, I think, to win Vancouver.
Damn.
And that one was really special because John Meadows was coaching me at the time, and John was also competing. So me and John both competed in Vancouver together. Like, he was doing 212 and I was doing open. And we got to compete at the same show. So that was really special. We got to do that together, and then I won that show. So that whole year, that 2015 year, was my best year. Like, I fucking exploded. Like, I don't know why. I think it was the Canadian fucking Serostim I was using. I was round as fuck. Like, my body just kind of like came to life. So I did a 3rd show that year, and then I wanted to win really badly. I wanted to make it 3, and I kind of pushed myself a little too hard It's so funny. This is going to sound so stupid. It was like I was ready, and it was the night before the show, I think it was the night before prejudging. And John was like, just go walk on the treadmill for 20 minutes. Don't walk fast. Just go like 2.5 miles per hour. Let's just get some carbs moving through your body. I'm like, all right, cool. So I go down to the hotel fucking treadmill and I'm on there just huffing it. Like 4 miles per hour, level 3 incline. I'm like, I'm going to be more peeled. I woke up flat. I got on stage flat, and I took second to Max Charles, who looked great at that show.
What did John say that morning he saw you? Like after you
I didn't tell him. I didn't tell him.
Nope.
Got it.
Went perfect.
Yeah, but John was also so good at like not. I feel like he must have known. Just like I feel like he was so good. Like okay, yo, he probably did something. If he knows that I'm in my head now. Like I feel like he was like, oh, this guy.
I did mention to him that I said I might have gone a little hard on the cardio. I didn't tell him I did it on purpose.
Yeah.
So, but no, it was all right. We did okay. But anyway, going back to your question, I'm sorry. 2 shows stand out: the first Pro Win and the 2011 Flex Pro.
Nice.
That show, I had my 3 brothers were in the audience, and there's still video of it. You can hear them in the background, like talking and cheering and stuff. And I competed against Dennis Wolf, Dexter Jackson, Evan Senapani.
Holy shit.
I think Ben Pekulski was 5th. I took 3rd at that show.
Wow.
Ani was my coach. I think it's the best I've ever been peaked. My physique looked fucking phenomenal. When I look back at it, I'm like, fuck, I should have won that show. People in the audience thought I should have been 2nd because Dexter had a couple years. There was a couple years of Dexter's career where he kind of went backwards a little bit and he was coming in not in his trademark condition. Mm-hmm. That was one of the shows. He came in, he was a little off, and people were like, man, you should have fucking took 2nd. And Evan was 1st. And that one stands out in my mind just because for anybody who competes, it's very hard to hit 100%. Like when you're backstage, if you're 95%, if you're 105%, like maybe you spilled over a little bit, or maybe you're too flat and you're like 85%.
Yeah.
It's very hard to like fucking nail it, like bang on, like to the point where you're pumping up, like your body is almost like your skin is like got goosebumps because the fucking pump is just like coming through and your skin is so thin, you can just feel it. Like that kind of peak is very, very rare. And I think at that show, I remember walking around backstage and I remember everybody looking at me, and even Evan pulled me aside. He goes, dude, you look fucking phenomenal. And I could feel it. And maybe other guys feel this all the time. I never feel that way. Backstage, I always feel like I could be better. I know I could be better. That was maybe one of very few shows where I was walking backstage thinking, this is the best I could possibly ever look. Like everything is bang on 100%. Like, so that show stands out in my mind just for the sheer kind of perfection of how it all went. And I beat Dennis Wolf.
That's crazy.
That's crazy.
That's crazy.
Who was fucking
Wild,
pissed.
by the way.
He was furious afterwards.
Holy shit. Yeah, dude.
Me and Dennis are friends now, but I remember he was fucking pissed. He was like,
Who the
fuck,
fuck is this guy?
Yeah, exactly. But in Dennis's defense, he also wasn't at his best. So
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Hell
So
yeah,
anyway.
bro. That does lead me into the next question, though. So that lineup sounds absolutely insane. Was there ever that one competitor that you found yourself consistently going against where you were just like, fuck, like, damn it, this guy, I need to beat this guy? Like, was there ever that one competitor where you're just like, damn, I need to...
I never competed against anybody like a significant amount of times where he was like a nemesis.
Yeah, no villains in your story.
Yeah.
What's that?
I said no real villains in your story.
No, I mean, I never liked Ben Pekulski. I always thought he was a dick.
That's what we want to hear.
But I beat him like 2 out of 3 times, so I'm all right with that. Or whatever. I think we were 2-2. But no, so yeah, there was like that we're both Canadians kind of fucking rivalry thing going on.
Sure,
Yeah.
Who wants to conquer Canada?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, right? And so there was that kind of shit going on between me and him. But no, I never had like the person I always looked at, and I've said this before on the podcast, I always used to look at Juan Morel.
Okay.
Juan Morel to me was like the gatekeeper between like the second tier and the first tier.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to beat Juan Morel. And it wasn't because I don't like Juan Morel. I think Juan's a great guy. I just always saw him as that border. Like there's the first tier and second tier, and Juan is blocking my fucking path.
Just gotta run through them.
Yeah. So when I did the 2017 Arnold, that was my worst look ever. But that was one of the. Sorry.
No, that's gonna lead me into my next question.
Yeah, but that was the person I wanted to beat at that show because Juan was. I think Juan was fourth at that show, and I'm like, fuck, if I could just beat Juan, and then I didn't show up. I showed up looking really bad at that show.
Damn. Okay, so that leads me into my next question, Ashley. So you peaked yourself for that Arnold, right?
No, I worked with John that year.
Oh, did you? What was the peak where you like overdid it on the potatoes?
That was it.
Was that it?
That wasn't John's fault. That was again my fault.
I wanna get into that a little more.
So,
if you're willing to.
no,
Let's just incriminate Fouad right now. Self-incrimination.
Well, no, because this will lead me into
I'm
an
definitely
educational
willing to because I
question
think
after.
these things will help. I think these things will help future competitors if they're listening.
Yes.
Well, I 100% will. I have a story.
Listen, big shows are hard.
Yeah.
If you don't believe in yourself enough, big shows will expose you. Okay.
Yep.
You can not believe in yourself and get away at a small show because nobody's watching and nobody gives a shit, right? When you do the Tampa Pro or you do the Vancouver Pro or you do the Toronto Pro, those are smaller shows. There's the hardcore fans are watching, but it's not a massive show with massive press and appeal and like, Arnold's there and it's a fucking massive deal, right?
Yeah. So
when you have a little bit of, if you don't believe in yourself enough, or if you have an imposter syndrome of some sort and you go into a big show, you will be exposed every fucking time. And that's why I don't feel like I ever did it as well as I should have at any of the Arnolds I did. I never peaked for an Arnold. I never peaked at the Olympia. And when I look back at my career, I qualified for the Olympia 4 times. I only went once. And I feel like the other 3 times I went, I kind of made excuses to not go because I thought the show was too big for me. I would have never admitted that to you at the time, but looking back at it 10 years later, you can see clearly why things happen the way they happen. Oh, I'm tired. Oh, I'm trying to put on size. Oh, I need to take these extra 3 months for off season. I'm not ready to do. The fact of the matter was, I didn't want to go to a show and lose. And I knew I couldn't win the Olympia. But what a real competitor would have done is go to the fucking Olympia and just see how good you can be.
Yeah.
Even if you're 3rd, if you're 6th, if you're 10th, if you're 12th, whatever the fuck it is, what a real competitor wants to do is bring their best wherever it places, doesn't matter. They want to be able to peak at the Olympia, right? Yeah. And that's why you hear people like James say, I don't care where I place. I just want to be able to fucking be on that stage and think this is the best I could look. Because then that's a true representation of where you belong, right? That's like, so I'm sorry, I forgot. Go back to what was the question again?
No, I just wanted to kind of figure out like what happens.
Oh,
like,
the potatoes.
Yeah, potatoes. Yeah, the potatoes.
I'm sorry, I was leading to that. I promise.
That was a great tangent, though. By the way, that was perfect.
So going back to that, that's kind of where I was going. Getting ready for the Arnolds, I would always do something the night before the show, the morning of the show, 2 days before the show. That was not part of the plan.
Okay.
Oh, maybe
self-sabotage. Yeah.
Maybe if I eat a little bit more eggs, whatever. Maybe if I eat a little bit more potatoes, I'll be more full. Maybe if I do this, I'll be. So at that Arnold, I remember after the morning show going, I just don't feel full. I feel flat after prejudging, right? So I went back to my room and I had like a fucking pound of fucking potatoes. And I'm like, but I need them to stick.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna add some fats. So I added
Jesus.
so I added coconut oil to my fucking potatoes.
Oh my God.
Ate the fucking potatoes. I was so fucking bloated. When you see pictures of me at the night show, my stomach is just like, and I remember pumping up backstage and thinking, I can't even fucking breathe. Like I was just bloated. So, And it's the crazy thing is people be like, oh, well, you're a fucking pro. Why did you do that? The insane thing is through a 16-week prep, I was a fucking soldier. Like I wouldn't cheat unless I was told to. Most of the time, if my coach was like, eat 300 grams of rice, I might eat 290. I'm like, oh, if I just strip a little bit, I'll get more shredded. But they said do 45 minutes of cardio, I might do 48. Like I was never I never cheated. I never deviated. I never did any of that shit when I was fucking prepping. For some reason, when it came to showtime, my mind would fuck with me so badly that I would create reasons why I needed. Man, before my first Arnold, I woke up in the morning and I'm like, I don't feel good. I feel sick. You know what? And I feel flat. I think I'm going to have some eggs and pancakes. Not part of the plan.
Fuck it. Let's see what it does.
So this is the mind fuck that happens when. And that's why I went on that tangent beforehand. When a show is too big for you, it can fuck with you to the point where you just don't make rational decisions.
That's the last season for me, even though it's not nearly to the extent of like a pro show and everything. But like, it was before Junior Nats, and it was, I think I was 2 days out. I was drying out so freaking well, and I was freaking full as shit. And Cam's like, dude, like, this is the best we've seen you yet. This is going to be freaking awesome. Don't do anything that I don't tell you to do. He's like, we're not using diuretics for this show. This is exactly where we need to be. So in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, shit, okay, like, I bet I can get drier.
Let's pop his eyes. Let's pop his eyes.
Yeah, so listen to this. Bro, no, I didn't do any diuretics. What I did is, like, Fouad, I grew up in middle school through high school chewing tobacco, okay? And I hadn't chewed since senior year of high school. Like, no bullshit. Like, was this when I was over in prep. And I'm like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go to the gas station. I'm going to get a tin, and I'm going to get some fucking Marlboro Blacks. You know? And I'm like, okay, I'm going to sit down before I go to bed, and I'm just going to put a dip in after dip, smoke some fucking Marlboros, and just start spitting. Just keep getting all this water out of me. And I had zero.
Oh, my God.
I had zero reason to think that I was holding water, and I looked bad. Okay? Like 5 minutes gets in, I have this dip in my mouth, and I haven't chewed in God knows how long. And I just start uncontrollably puking.
Oh, no.
Of course, yeah.
Oh my God, it was so bad. I was puking, and I wasn't doing any nicotine, so I had a nick sick from the tobacco and the cigarettes, and I was like, dude, I just fucked up this entire.
That's a way to get really dry.
Bro, I woke up looking so fucking good the next day, and I was like, yo, this is it. I'm on.
It worked.
My coach, and Cameron's like, he's like, dude, see what I told you, bro? Don't do anything. You're going to look your best. I'm like, yeah, I totally listened to you, man. But and then I showed up on stage, and it was a 2-point difference at Junior Nats. And I was like, fuck. But it was, and then 2 weeks later, won it at Universe, but didn't do that at Universe this time. But I looked way better at Universe. But
Well, the reason I know that is the 2014 Dallas Europa, I was working with Dennis James. We flew there. I had my chicken and rice in one container. Like, I put the chicken in with the rice. Yeah. I don't know what happened, man. Rice is notorious for fucking going bad on you.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have put chicken in there with it. So I eat it on like the Thursday night, I start throwing up. I throw up all day Friday. I wake up Saturday morning. I'm literally laying backstage in a fetal position going, I'm shaking because I'm dehydrated of how dehydrated I am. I tell my wife I'm not going on stage. I'm like, I'm not going out there, man. I'm like, I can't even fucking move. I probably look horrible. My wife goes, they're all going to think you're a huge fucking pussy. You better get up and get out there. I'm like, you know what? You're fucking right. So I get up, I get glazed. I look in the mirror as I'm pumping up, and I'm like, I'm a little flat, but fucking just dialed, like peeled as fuck. Like, my face looked like I was dead. Like, it looked like I was going to die. Oh my God. And that was my best condition ever. And I threw up for like 3 fucking days. For 2 days. It was great.
So dude, there should be throwing up and peaking protocols.
I was just saying, dude, all of our listeners are going to be like, well, if shit goes bad, I'll just puke.
All right, after meal 5, you take these 2 fingers and put them down your throat until nothing's in you.
Why don't we get all that back
Everyone
out?
Backstage is going to be throwing up. It just smells disgusting.
Going to create a bunch of bulimics.
So that does kind of get me into like kind of the second part of this. So taking away like the mental side of like the peaking process, doing what you did like for that show, what are some things that you probably should have done that would have like related a better outcome in terms of like your look? Like instead of doing the potatoes, like what do you think would have been a better like option for the people that like are
Listen to your fucking coach.
Yeah.
God, we just got to clip that right now so everybody can see this.
Oh my God, we talk about that all the time.
I'm telling you, man. Listen, I'm not going to say I'm a guru, so I'm not going to say, and plus I can say to you for myself personally, whenever I mixed fats and potatoes together, it would result in a brick in my stomach, which I should have fucking known when I did that. And I think that's why I went to coconut oil, because I'm like, coconut oil is easier to digest, so maybe it won't fuck with me. And then it fucked with me anyway. So I would say, as far as like peak week things to do, a lot has changed. When I was peaking for shows, people still did no fucking water. Like I remember we would drink 12 liters of water, which I think is 3 gallons. We'd drink 3 gallons of water on the Wednesday.
That's
I would
crazy.
drink 3 gallons of water on the Thursday. And then on a Friday, we'd cut water completely at like 2:00 in the afternoon.
Holy shit.
And then I wouldn't drink any water until after the show on Saturday night. I might drink a glass of water after prejudging. But that was our peak process, right? It was never like this whole like, oh, you're going to drink all the way through kind of thing. Like that didn't happen.
Fouad, peaking protocols are so much different now. Like, dude,
I know that. I know.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, I'm telling, like, hey, this meal you're gonna have literally 1 ounce of water. Like, I'm measuring everything. Okay, next meal, no water. Meal after that, fucking 300 milliliters. It's but it's so crazy to it's cool because it shows that bodybuilding has grown with science, with anecdote, with everything. So like the difference in how you guys approach that, and you're also seeing more consistent physiques nowadays.
Well, I wouldn't say that. What I would say is the look that judges want on stage has changed drastically from the 90s to now. So like I think guys are equally as conditioned as they were in the 90s, if not maybe more as a whole, right? Like you see more guys with shredded glutes, guys like I'm talking about purely body fat level, right? But I also think guys were drier in the 90s, but they were also more flat. Right. I think the look that people want now, like that's why people used to say like my era or today's era, you hear some of the old guys go, well, we were more shredded in the 90s. They weren't actually more shredded. It's just that the peaking protocol involved zero fucking water. So the muscle was flatter.
Yeah.
But they also looked drier.
Yeah.
And it had more of a chiseled look where you see guys on stage now, they look like marshmallows, right? They're big, puffy, fucking round muscle bellies, right? It's not jagged edges. It's round and fucking, right? So that's a water manipulation thing. And that's why, like, when I talk to pros now, they're like, yeah, I drank 2 liters of water on Friday and Saturday. I'm like, what the fuck?
That makes so much sense, though, with, like, the guys in the 90s. You know?
Well, that's why when I hear people say, like, oh, guys don't fucking suffer anymore. I'm like, you don't even know what you're talking about, because the body fat level, as far as actual fat content on the physique, is just as low as it was before, if not lower.
Right.
It's the way the physique is presented, and that has to do with water and glycogen. It doesn't have to do with body fat. So usually the muscle ends up looking rounder and smoother instead of flatter and more jagged. And to the untrained eye or the fair weather fan, they see it as conditioning.
Right. Yeah.
Do you understand? So that's why, like, and that goes to what you're saying about the peaks now, which is, you know, I'm going to drink a liter of water Friday. I'm going to drink a half a liter of water on Saturday. And that keeps everything round and bubbly looking for the stage.
I think that's where it gets hard to translate from the in-person judging versus the through the camera lens too.
Right.
Because you can't see, like, the contrast of that camera lens isn't picking up the difference because they are a little rounder and it's not as sharp. Whereas sometimes when you look at those old pictures of those guys, it looks like knives in there. Yeah, it's crazy. They're so sharp.
I was gonna say the videos I send them just like a daily video of Kevin Levrone highlights, like all the time, like an hour before we all go to the gym, so we get fucking hyped. And like the videos of him, I mean, he always like you said, he always had that insane sharp look. Like you could see almost every line in his deltoids when he'd sit there and hit those most musculars. You'd be like, Jesus.
But the other thing you guys, maybe not you guys, but I think people don't realize is a lot of those photos that you saw were in theaters with great lighting.
Yeah.
When you see pictures of Martin and Vito from last year's Detroit show, they look like the guys from, if you turned up the structure a little bit on it, looks just like the guys from the fucking 90s, except bigger and rounder.
Yeah.
Right.
But the detail and depth of their striations is as deep, but it's the lighting, it's the theater, it's the atmosphere. When you put a guy in a banquet hall with kind of broad lighting that just kind of washes everything out, you're never going to get to see the depth of the striations and the fucking detail in a physique. You're just not going to see it.
Yeah.
I want to comment on that quick too, because we went to the Chicago Pro, and you know what? That's so true, because you get to just zoom in, lock in, and we had like at the Chicago
flames?
Pro, we had like the fucking powerlifting competition. I had an old woman having a normal conversation behind me, and I was trying to like enjoy Justin Shire's pro debut, and I'm hearing them like talk behind. You know, it just takes you out of it completely. Like the translation's terrible. Yeah.
So going back to prep rules, I will say this. I don't coach anymore, but I can comment on these few simple things. I don't think shit loading works. I think when you shit load, you're throwing darts at a dartboard, and you may hit a bullseye once in a while, but you're probably going to miss most of the time. I also think shit loading can work if you're fucking super, super depleted, and you kind of just anything will work at that point because you've eaten so little and you're so flat that you need something to fill out. So I would never suggest in a proper prep that's done right to use any type of shitty food to load. The second rule I would say is start loading. If you're not classic and you don't have a weight cap and you're an open bodybuilder and there's no weight cap, start loading 3 or 4 days ahead of time, because it's easier to load the muscle and then pull back. Then it's a lot harder to wait until the Thursday or Friday and then try and load a muscle and it's not ready in time.
100%.
Kind of more like a front load type of thing.
Yep.
I always think it's better. Listen, if you're really depleted, start on Tuesday. If your prep has gone pretty well and you've gone through a lot of ups and downs with your load, so your body can load easily, I would still start on Wednesday. I would never start loading on a Thursday or Friday. It takes longer than that.
I try to load, because like, dude, it's over 24 hours before like mass amounts of food can just like fully saturates in your body. Digestion, everything settles, ADH, and aldosterone, all that stuff. It's like I try to load people as early as possible. Keep that stress low and then just cruise into it.
Some other rules I would say is leave salt in. A lot of guys pull salt, which is a bad move because you pull salt. That's an easy way to flatten out. So whatever your salt level is going into the show, I would just leave it at that level. I don't know. There's a lot of little rules you can get into that would just,
I think those are great staples, though. I think those are great staples.
And they vary from person to person. Like, some people, like I always needed a little bit of fat in my diet when I was peaking. So for me, the Wednesday would be more carb and protein heavy. And as it got to Friday, it would switch to more fat and protein and a little less carb. So, but I always had a little bit of fat in my diet, even starting on the Wednesday, because the carbs wouldn't load properly without some fats in those meals.
Yep.
So I could never, for me personally, I could never load on like fish and rice or like
right through you.
Yeah, or chicken and potato. And usually larger guys can't. Like usually if you get a bigger bodybuilder, they need some fat to slow the carbs down and like get it to sink in.
I have a question for you. You just kind of gave those pillars or just piece of advice. And one thing that you have always been open about is, and we've spoken about on this podcast, is like the mentality behind going into these shows. Like, what are some of those mental pillars that you kind of, looking back at it, you would, besides just like listening to your coach, those mental pillars that you would give to guys at like, hey, this is what I would change about my mental approach to these shows back then, knowing what I know now, because I've had experiences with some pretty big athletes where they really, not in terms of big athletes, just like big physiques, not big, in terms of what who they are in the sport, but the mental blockage sometimes really, really is tough and stands in the way of people becoming what they know, what people achieving what they know they can achieve. But man, I think it would really help the listener, especially people listen to us, of what are some good mental things that you'd tell these competitors nowadays, especially with how big social media is, but what you learned the most from.
That's a really tough one, Nick. That's not an easy thing. You know why? Because I would say mental progression comes with experience. Mm-hmm. You can't really, like, if you've never done a big show, like let's say it's your very first Arnold Classic or very first Olympia, and maybe you haven't done that many shows, or maybe it's your first nationals. Maybe you're getting ready for the nationals or whatever, and it's your first crack at a pro card. There's not really any exercises you can do, right? I can't be like, well, if you listen to this kind of music, it'll calm you down. Like, the most important things, I think, to quell anxiety is preparation.
Yep.
Preparation breeds confidence. Confidence quells anxiety. So if you've crossed all your T's and dotted all your I's, if you look the way you're supposed to look a week out, if you've done all your posing, when you can look in the mirror and go, I fucking did everything I know I could have done.
Yep.
And if you can look in the mirror and go, and not like your wife told you look good or your fucking buddy told you look good, if you can look in the mirror and go, I really like the way I look, that will bring a level of confidence that will bring that anxiety level down. So the only thing I can say is I remember there was one prep where I was getting ready for prep, I think, I think we were 8 weeks out or 6 weeks out or something like that. And I said to John, I said some stupid line like, okay, man, it's fucking time to turn things up. We're getting close. And he's like, we're not going to turn anything up. What are you talking about? It's like, you're going to go eat and you're going to fucking train and you're going to do what you've been doing all year long. He's like, why do you do this thing where, like, when you're prepping, you have to like change, like turn the dial up? He's like, you do this all year. He's like, you prep. He's like, you train all year long. You do cardio all year long. You eat your meals every 2-3 hours all year long. This is no fucking different.
Right.
You're just going to eat less food. You're going to do everything else you've been doing all year long. You're just going to eat less food. Mm-hmm. And it kind of like, I know that sounds really, really simplistic, but it kind of like switched something in my head. I was like, yeah, you know what? This isn't like a different thing. We do this all fucking year. We eat every 2 or 3 hours all year long. We train as hard as we can all year long. We do cardio all year long. This is all we're doing is reducing the fucking calories and adding posing.
And I think guys just honestly, I think they really fall into that mental slippage once they get into prep, where they don't realize that it's just the one variable that's different is the food. Okay. Food and that food and the drugs. And I think people can avoid that entirely if they just realize how to keep themselves mentally composed in the off season. You know what I'm saying? And I think that just mental composure is so big when drugs are in play, when drugs are not in play, when your food's higher and when food is lower. And because if you don't know, if you've never been a very composed person, or you've tried to get better at that skill acquisition, then man, when food's low and drugs are higher, or drugs are different in contest prep, that's going to make your prep so much more difficult. Right. And that composure, dude, seems to be a common thing with a lot of people where they never really had that self-belief.
I think the big thing that you hit on, though, that is the key, is the checking all the boxes.
Yes.
Yeah. If you aren't checking all the boxes, that's usually starting to breed that little bit of anxiety. Like you said, maybe they ate too many, maybe they overate because they whatever, just slipping off the plan.
It could be something simple, like I didn't do my cardio. I didn't do it. Like, right.
Yeah. And then you start overthinking, and the anxiety starts to kick in, and then you start to slip in other areas. And then
I remember when you and I were training over prep, dude, something that you noticed that would just keep me in a good groove. And then I noticed it as well too, is be like, yo, pro card set, pro card reps, like all this shit, like train, like this is where it starts now. And that was always in my mind in my 2-year off season, 2.5-year off season before my prep last year, but just hearing that out, just like having that internal dialogue, it's like, yep, Devo's right. Like nothing's fucking changed. This is what I've been doing for the past 2-3 fucking years.
Same reps.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like same reps, same set, same intensity. Like nothing changes now. That helped me a ton over prep. And that composure, literally what you just said. It's so much easier to stay composed if you know that you've done everything according to plan. and you haven't slipped. You know what I'm saying? And that's something that I wish people would hold greater weight in their heart.
I think I saw a Jeff Bezos quote, and I'm probably going to butcher the fuck out of it, but it was something along the lines of anxiety comes from not doing the things you know you should have done.
Oh yeah, easy. I've been saying that for sure.
So that when I saw that quote, I'm like, that's all of it. That's everything. That's your anxiety when you come to a peak at the end of a prep and you're like, yeah, that night where I shouldn't have ate that taco, or that day where I fucking didn't go to sleep because I was fucking this girl, or whatever happened through your prep. At the end, you're like, fuck, I should have slept. I should have not ate that. I should have did the extra cardio.
I shouldn't have fucked that girl.
Yeah, I should have posed more. I should have all of that shit. And people think it's not there. This is the crazy thing about hindsight. You may think when you're in your peak moment that's not actually in your mind, but subconsciously it's fucking there.
Yep.
That's what's actually creating the anxiety. You may not be able to identify it, but that's subconsciously in your fucking head at all times.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that makes sense, dude, because like the times in my life that I've had where I've told myself I have anxiety, apart from bodybuilding, this is before I was even, I'm talking about before you ever even signed me. The times that I had this anxiety is because looking back at it, I realized that the stuff that I knew I needed to be doing in life wasn't getting done.
Yeah, it's good.
You know, exactly. You know, and like learning, it took, I mean, I learned that as I got into bodybuilding, thank God, and it didn't really persist into it more, but that doesn't even have to go with anxiety in bodybuilding. You can go with anxiety with everything.
Anything.
Yeah.
All right, guys. The D2 podcast is going to be traveling to the Detroit Pro this next week. So we are going to be in person with the Fouad master himself, the big Haas. So we are going to be turning this into a 2-part episode. So if you loved what you heard here today, then you're going to love even more from Fouad next week. So please come back, stay tuned, and we have a ton more for you guys. Thank you for listening. Catch you later.